The following presentation by farmdoc member from the University of Illinois Department of Agricultural and Consumer Economics in the College of Aces, Joana Colussi, was recorded on the 4th day of March at the Beef House in Covington, Indiana, during the annual All-Day Ag Outlook.
Today I'm gonna talk about crop prospects in South America, with focus in Brazil, Argentina, and Paraguay. I was in Brazil last month. During my stay there, I visited some soybean farms and corn fields in the state of Rio Grande do Sul, the southernmost state in Brazil. So we have completely different situations when you compare the south of Brazil and the center-west of Brazil. I'm talking a little bit more about that. So you can follow me in the handouts that you have on the tables if you want. So what's going on so far in soybean season? So as March 2nd, actually last Sunday, 0.5% of soybeans were harvested in Brazil. Like I said, we have yield reductions in the south of Brazil, especially in Rio Grande do Sul, due to the drought. Again, in 4 years, this is the third time that there is a drought in the south of Brazil and also in Argentina because of La Niña. But there are excellent yields in the center-west states. So even though this drought in the south of Brazil, soybean crop is forecast to hit a record over 6 billion bushels. This is 12% increased from last year. You can see in the slide 4, we can see the numbers regarding the last decade. As you can see, the acreage, 117 million acres this year in Brazil. Last year was 114 million acres. So if you look in the slide 5, private consultancies have higher projections for Brazil 24-25 crop season. Some private consultancies are very optimistic with projections between 6.2 billion bushels and 6.4 billion bushels. Some adjustments may be made in the March reports. For example, CONAB will release its report next Thursday, March 13. Maybe we'll have some adjustments, especially related to the soybean crop in the south of Brazil. But in Mato Grosso state, do you know that Mato Grosso produces over a quarter of Brazil's soybean crop? Mato Grosso reached a record harvest, up 20% compared to the previous season that was hit by a drought. Like I said, in Rio Grande do Sul, the situation is very different. The state are suffering again with droughts. The lack of the rain has started in the beginning of January. Until December, the end of December, the situation was good. There was very similar than Argentina. As you can see in the slide 8, the yields are very inconsistent across the country, with most of the areas with excellent and good yields, as you can see in the green areas and also in the orange areas. So in the green areas, we have some states with 60 bushels per acre, like Mato Grosso, Goiás with 61 bushels per acre. We also have good yields in the Mato Piba region. Mato Piba region is considered the new agriculture frontier in Brazil. It's formed by 4 states, Maranhão, Tocantins, Piauí, and Bahia. They are having good yields there. And the exceptions are in Rio Grande do Sul and Mato Grosso do Sul. By the way, I forgot to mention, we have 2 more Brazilians here on the stage, that they are specialists in soybean production in Brazil. So I'm sure they will help me to answer the questions you may have. Vitor, Favoreto, and Marli, thank you so much for coming this morning. So if you go back, look at slide 9, please. Over the past 5 decades, Brazil's soybean yield growth has been faster than the United States, and yield levels in the two countries have been about the same in recent years. You can see the national average soybean yield for the United States and Brazil. It's a trend since 1974 until 2023. But despite the overall linear trend that you can see in the last 5 decades, soybean yield trend in Brazil has shown significant variation, as you can see on the map, with some regions increasing yields faster than others. We can see the difference in 4 regions. So south of Brazil, you can see the variation, center-west of Brazil, southeast, and Mato Piba. So we will not have so much time to touch on that, to try to analyze the difference between the states and the regions, but in summary, in the center-west states, Mato Grosso, Goiás, Mato Grosso do Sul, the weather there, the climate is much more stable than in the south of Brazil. So in the south of Brazil, we never know how the weather will be. So it's different than in the center-west, where there is the wet season and the dry season. So it's easier for farmers to know how the weather will be. And also in that region, there are much more big farmers that they are capable to invest much more sometimes in machinery, technology, seeds, so more investments as a whole. So anyway, let's focus on the current projections. Look the slide 11, where we show the soybean exports in the last decade and also a projection from this year. Soybean exports could reach a new record this year. The projections are based on record harvests and also in a high favorable exchange rate. Brazilian currency depreciation against the US dollar often benefits farmers by making exports more competitive, although raises the cost of the inputs like fertilizers, seeds, not so much seeds, more fertilizers and pesticides. But overall, it's good for Brazilian farmers when we have Brazilian currency depreciation. So Mark indicates that the Brazilian real will continue trading at around 6 reals to $1 in 2025. Just for you have one idea about the depreciation of the Brazilian currency, 2-3 years ago, $1 was equal for 4.5 reals. Nowadays, it's almost 6. And also, if you look at slide 12, you can see the China's share of the United States and Brazil soybean exports. I'm not talking so much about that. International market, Joe talk about that. I'm sure that Jonathan Copps will touch this afternoon in the possible implications around the tariffs. But in this graph, you can see, you can have one idea about the effect from the trade war that have started in 2018 when the China's share of Brazil soybean exports was over 80%. And that year, the American share was 18%. So in the last year, 2024, the China's share of Brazil exports was soybean exports, 73%. Meanwhile, the share from America was 52%. So I guess we are done with soybeans so far, at least in Brazil. So let's move on to corn production. We are on the slide 13. If you'd like, follow me, look in the handouts. So as March 2nd, 70% of the second crop corn that we call safrinha. Safrinha is little harvest in Portuguese, but nowadays it's responsible for almost 80% of the total corn production in Brazil. But 70% of the second crop corn was planted The planting season, it's a little delayed compared to last year due to excessive rainfall in the center-west. Remember that I said that there is drought in the south of Brazil. So La Niña year, drought in the south of Brazil and Argentina, and rainfalls in the center-west of Brazil. When you have an El Niño year, is the opposite. Last year, do you remember that Mato Grosso faced a drought? So, and Argentina and south of Brazil, they have good amounts of rainfalls. So even though this a little bit delay in planting season, when I say safrinha, I'm talking about the second crop that is planted right after the soybean harvest. Let's say that I'm a farmer in Mato Grosso. The day that I'm harvesting my soybeans in January and February is the same day that I will plant my corn. Sometimes in the day after, but not more than that. The window is very short to plant a second crop in Brazil. But even though this challenge, the total corn is expected to reach 4.8 billion bushels, a 5% increase compared to last year. Take a look at the numbers regarding corn production in slide 14. As you can see, the acreage is pretty stable, 52 million acres, almost the same compared to last year. But the production last year, 4.5 billion bushels. This year, the expectation is 4.8 billion bushels. Again, the second crop is just starting in Brazil. There are a lot of stuff to happen from now until June, July, when the corn will be harvested in Brazil. Look at slide 15, and you can see the total corn production in Brazil in 3 crops per year. So as you can see, the second crop, the safrinha, is responsible for almost 80% of the total corn production in Brazil, followed by the first crop that's concentrated in the south of Brazil, and the third crop that have started a few years ago and is concentrated in the northeast of Brazil. And the safrinha, I'm not a specialist in biofuels, but I'm touch a little bit in this topic because the safrinha is very important for the Brazil's ethanol boom. Corn ethanol plants have begun appearing in the last decade in the Central West states. When I say that, it sounds a little bit weird for Americans, but for Brazilians, do you know, sugarcane is the main source to produce ethanol. It's not corn. So nowadays, there are 20 ethanol plants in Brazil using corn as a feedstock. These ethanol mills are capable of producing ethanol either using corn or sugarcane, or corn only. We call full corn plants or flex plants, when the units, they can use either corn or sugarcane. And in 2 years, the corn ethanol production could double in Brazil, reaching 12 billion liters. We can see in the slide 17 the corn ethanol production growing in Brazil. And if you go back in 2017, the corn ethanol production in Brazil was 0. Nowadays, represent almost 20% of the total corn production, the total ethanol production in Brazil. It's still 82% of the total ethanol in Brazil is produced from sugarcane, and the remaining 18% is produced with corn. There is forecast that the corn could reach a share of 30% in 5 years, 7 years. So moving on, in the slide 18, we can see the total corn exports by the United States and Brazil. So I don't know if you remember, but In November 2022, China opened its market to Brazilian corn for the first time. So in 2023, not by coincidence, Brazil became the #1 in corn exports just this year. We know that America is much bigger in corn exports and production as well. But the situation changed in 2024. The recovery of supply in major producing countries like in Argentina, in the United States, in Europe, in Ukraine. And the decline in Chinese demand have contributed to a slowdown in Brazil's corn exports in 2024. As if you compare 2023, Brazil exported 2.2 billion bushels, and in 2024, Brazil exports 1.5 billion bushels. So there was a decline, almost 30%. And the two factors that explain that were the decline in Chinese demand, like I said, and the recovery of the supply in major producing areas. When you think about the decline in Chinese demand, you can see in the slide 19 the China's share of the United States and Brazil corn exports. As you can see in the graph, Brazil's corn exports to China sharply declined, dropping China's share of Brazil's corn exports from 29% in 2023 to 6% in 2024. So the United States also reduced its share to China. So there are a lot of factors that explain that. We know that China is trying to reduce its dependence on the international market. When you think about soybeans, China imports by year around 100 million metric tons, and regarding corn, China imports around 20 million metric tons. So the dependence related to China is much lower compared to, related to corn, is much lower compared to the dependence related to soybeans. But even though they are trying to approve some new varieties in China, GMO varieties, to be able to increase its production and reduce its dependence from Brazil and also the United States. I don't know how much time I have, Todd, just for, because, oh, that's perfect. So let's move on to crop prospects in Argentina. I need 10 minutes to talk about Argentina. That's enough. 20 minutes for Brazil and 10 for Argentina. You agree? Now, I'm just doing this calculation. Look at the number of the acres that Brazil planted and Argentina. And also 2 minutes for Paraguay. So what's going on so far in soybean season in Argentina? So I don't know if you are reading the recent news, but rains relieved much of Argentinians' agricultural land in the last 2 weeks. Since February 1920, the situation completely changed in Argentina. Precipitation over many regions has prevented any new cuts to the Argentinian soybean harvest and corn harvest as well. And the rainfall is likely to continue over the next few days in Argentina, helping even more. Remember, center-west of Brazil, the calendar is a little bit different than the calendar in Argentina and in south of Brazil. The harvest season in the center-west of Brazil is in January, February. The harvest season in the south of Brazil and Argentina is in March and April. In Argentina, in some regions, even in May. So it's a little bit different compared with center-west of Brazil. So take a look at the numbers regarding soybean production in the slide 22. The projection that Argentina will reach 1.8 billion bushels, a bit higher than last year. And like I said, the harvest will start in the end of this month. We can see on the map in the slide 23, the soybean crop conditions. It was in February 20. Favorable conditions that are the green areas in most part of the country. We have some concerns in the yellow part that you have regular conditions. So if you look the slide 24, we can see some pictures that were taken in different regions in Argentina. In Argentina, they have the early soybeans and the late soybeans. 80% of the production is early soybeans. And the late soybeans is around 20%. So we have different situations. See, these pictures were taken in the La Pampa and Buenos Aires province, and you have completely different situations. We also have this variation regarding corn, the early corn and the late corn. So the early corn and the early soybeans suffered less than the late corn and the late soybeans because of the weather variation. The drought in Argentina, with very high temperatures, started in the middle of January, very similar than in the south of Brazil. I was there, it was very hot, with the temperatures close to 100 Fahrenheit. And almost no rain. But the situation changed significantly after February 20. Of course, there are some fields that is not possible to recover, but there are others that it is possible. So a little bit about what's going on in corn season in Argentina. The recent rainfalls have also slowed down early corn harvest, even though it was very helpful for soybeans and for some late corn as well. It caused a little bit delay in the harvest. Early corn harvest is underway in Argentina right now, with about 10% of the corn crop harvested. Like I said, there were drought conditions and hot temperatures until the middle of February. So let's move on to and see the numbers regarding the total corn acreage and production in Argentina. Last season, as you can see, there was a drop in the planted area in Argentina for corn from 25 million acres to 19 million acres, a decrease over 25%. Last season, corn faced significant losses in Argentina in the very end of the season because of bacteria which stunts crop growth. And because of that, many farmers have decided to reduce the corn planted area because they were afraid that this challenge could happen again, and they decreased the corn area and they increased the soybean area. Argentina is like Illinois, Indiana. They don't have double cropping between corn and soybeans. They have corn and soybeans in the first season, and they have wheat as a second crop during the winter time. So farmers, they must to decide between corn and soybeans. Different than in the center-west states in Brazil, that farmers can do soybeans in the first season and corn in the second season. So we can see the numbers regarding corn production in Argentina, 1.8 billion bushels. That's the last forecast from the Rosario Board of Trade. We have also some numbers regarding the Bolsa de Cereales de Buenos Aires, the stock exchange from Buenos Aires, that the numbers are a little bit down than that, but we'll see. We still have some time for Argentina in March. So, and on the map in the slide 27, we can see the corn crop conditions after the recent rainfalls. I'm almost done, Todd. I'd like to talk a little bit about the economy in Argentina. You may remember last year that I mentioned about the inflation in Argentina, about the poverty in Argentina. So overall, we can say that Argentina economy has started to show some signs of a recovery, and Argentinian producers have recently received some good news, at least for them, related to the reduction of the tariffs on export. So Argentina is going in a different direction than the United States, reducing the tariffs. So the Javier Milei government has cut tariffs on exports, the famous retenciones, of soybean meal and oil from 31% to 24%. The tax on soybean grain was reduced from 33% to 26%, and also they reduced the tax on corn. This was announced in the end of January and will take place until June. There is expectation that the Argentinian government could reduce even more the tariffs in the second semester of the year. 1 minute for Paraguay. Is that okay? Yeah, so crop prospects in Paraguay. Let's take a look on Paraguayan projections, what's going on so far. As February 28, around 85% of the soybeans were harvested in Paraguay. We have different situations across the country. Yield reductions in the north regions due to drought and good yield levels in the south regions. The soybean crop is forecast at 320 million tons in Paraguay, a 20% decrease from last year's record harvest. My last slide, 31st. Look, the South American soybean production as a whole, considering Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, and Uruguay. While the next few days, I would say, or few weeks, is still be important for the crop season in Argentina and in the south of Brazil, it's hard to imagine a shift that would change completely the outlook for a record harvest in South America. We have some reductions in Paraguay, but we'll have increase in Argentina and a huge increase in Brazil with a record harvest. So, and this scenario will likely to keep the global prices under pressure. So there are a lot of soybeans coming from the South America in the next few months. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm very happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Who's got oh yeah, we've got more than one question. Let's start over here. Yes, sir. In slide 4, has Brazil actually increased acreage by 35 million in the last 10 years?
Yeah, that's correct.
That's probably correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Does the trend continue?
Yeah, and if you think about the future expansion, there is a potential that Brazil could add. Of course, there is land available. I'm not saying that will happen. But when you think about land available, there are 70 million acres that could be converted from degraded pasture land into cropland in Brazil. What is degraded pasture land? It's the areas, it's not Amazon, it's not native vegetation, it's area that nowadays are occupied by livestock, cattle production. In this area are not productive, so for the ranchers is better to sell this land or to rent this land into cropland. So there is a forecast that Brazil, it's not a forecast, it's a study that shows that there is around 70 million acres that could be added to agriculture production in Brazil. That's the land available is one factor, we know. There are a lot of factors at play, like international market, Chinese demand, Brazilian currency, but yes, these numbers are correct, even though very impressive.
Yeah, and recall that it may not be new lands either. It may just be that it's the second or the third crop that is being planted on the same land. So here in the United States, we have second crop soybeans, or beans after wheat, and they have, which is nominal in the United States, not nominal. I can't remember what that number is. I read it in the CONAB number, I think, in the CONAB report last month. 25% or 20%. Don't quote me on that one, but it's a big figure by comparison. It's enough to make a huge difference in the number of total acres in production that they have.
Yeah, thank you for this. This 70 million acres is just degraded pasture land, but also there are 40 million acres that could be occupied as a double cropping, because nowadays less than 50% of the soybean area in Brazil is occupied by corn as a second crop. We can say that the corn production in Brazil could at least double if they just occupy the same area that they use nowadays for soybeans. So I am talking about 100 million acres that could be added to Brazilian agriculture.
Yes, sir.
I had the same question on their adding 5 million acres.
So he has the same question about adding acreage. Is there a price level at which soybean producers simply won't do that?
I would say the current price is the limit. Less than that could be very difficult, tough. But there is another factor in Brazil. Here in the US, dollar is dollar. So $10 per bushel is $10 today, next year. But in Brazil, we have the depreciation. We have the Brazilian currency. So farmers, they sell the soybeans in dollar, but sometimes not. They calculate that as a real. So if you have a very high dollar in the Brazilian market, they can offset the low price of soybeans. And that happened in the last 2 or 3 years, 2 years at least.
Yes?
Isn't Brazil going to face?
Yeah.
Does Brazil face the same issue with China related to its population coming down?
Yes, and I would say that the Brazilian risk is much higher than the American risk, because the Brazilian dependence of the Chinese imports is huge. If you think about soybeans, it's over 70%. But Brazil also sells a lot of beef to China, chicken. So if the Chinese demand decrease, Brazil must to find some alternatives, and it's hard to find an alternative to replace China, right? There is this huge concern in Brazil.
Paul Cooley in the back, and then you. So it's a policy question about an incoming tariff on U.S. exports of ethanol to Brazil, and whether that will be addressed or not.
Yeah, this is a controversial topic. Maybe Scott Irwin would be the best person to answer that, or Jonathan
He'll
Cox.
be here this afternoon,
Yeah,
so we can wait.
Yeah, I mean, regarding sugar, also it's a controversial topic, because there is this tariffs to protect the domestic market. Brazil has increased a lot the ethanol production made by corn, like I said, but to be honest, I don't know if the situation will change, at least in the short term. I don't know. Maybe we need to.
Yeah. Why did Brazil begin to produce ethanol? What happened that caused 21 new plants to be put up?
Yeah, there are 21 right now, and plus 9 that will start the operation, I would say, in the next 2 years. The answer is simple. The availability of the corn in the center-west. So when you think about the ethanol plants with sugarcane, they are concentrated in the southeast of Brazil, in São Paulo region, Mato Grosso do Sul as well, because of the sugarcane availability there. But this history is a little bit longer, but during the many years, the soybeans were the priority in Brazil. I know that in the US, sometimes corn is the priority, soybeans is the second priority. In Brazil, soybeans is still the priority. Farmers make much more money with soybeans than corn, because they produce less corn on average in terms of yields. But the availability of a lot of corn, the safrinha, the second season in the center-west of Brazil, Mato Grosso do Sul, Goiás, created this opportunity to use corn as a source to produce ethanol. And also these plants, they are flex, so they can use sugarcane, because you know that we cannot storage sugarcane. So now they can use the sugarcane during the season of the sugarcane, and they can use corn during the season of the corn, or they can storage corn and use corn any time of the year. So answer your question, what created this opportunity was the amount, the availability of the corn production in the Center West. And that helped to increase the value of the corn in Brazil.